Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in Richland County. Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife Maureen and burying her body.
The 12-year-old son finally took the stand.
Boyd confidently told the jury it was his decision to testify against his father.
I heard a scream. I heard a thud. It was about this loud.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
I decided at an early age that our trauma should not be what defines us. It's what we choose to do with it that does. I'm here to share my unique perspective on true crime, mental health, society, and popular culture, and always with a slight sense of humor. I'm Collier Landry, and welcome to my show. Mover Nation, what's going on? What's going on? Happy Sunday to everyone. A little echo, little delay. Look at this. I have a snazzy blazer on. Changing the look up, guys. We've got a whole new situation coming in store for y'all. Oh, and this is very loud. Hang on. Sorry. I'm going to put a little poll on the screen. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Alex Murdaugh, who's back in the news. We're going to watch a little of the Law and Crime Network's little sidebar. I'm going to kind of talk about some things regarding Alex Murdaugh. Thank you all for being here. Happy Sunday. Just a reminder, next Sunday, which is the last Sunday of the month. Yeah. Last Sunday of the month, we have our live members only meet and greets. That'll be coming up. That is at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And it is a great thing where we all get together. I get to interact with you guys face to face on Google Meet. It's all members only. Whether you're a Patreon supporter, whether you are a YouTube channel member, it is available to you. We do the last Sunday of every month, as I said, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So check it out. I'll put more details in here. I want to will rule on Murdaugh. So we're gonna put a little poll up. Lena Beautiful, thank you so much for being a member for 16 months. New trial? Not so fast, Alex. All right. It has been suggested to me that we start doing a little more polling here to interact with you guys. And I think that's a great idea, by the way. Shout out to On the Outskirts on that one, and Karen Fan as well. Give me a second to post y'all's comments here. I got to go back into my streaming software. It's like a little back and forth. But anyways, live members only meet and greets starting next week. As I say, the last. I don't need to mirror my camera. What are we doing here? Let me stop all this. We're gonna have. We have those at the end of the month. There we go. Thank you so much, Lena Beautiful. Also, we had a few more channel members join this last weekend. Zet came in and was really kind enough to talk about or to sponsor some memberships. So we have new channel members: Diana Burnett, Professor Phil Bell, No Yes Well Maybe, Carol Sue Scott, and Margaret, and then obviously Zet joined. And thank you so much again, Lena Beautiful, for rejoining. I really greatly appreciate that. It's amazing. Amazing. So here we are. We're going to play a little bit about this Alex Murdaugh situation that's going on. Going to listen to a little sidebar with Jesse Weber. I might find some other stuff. You guys know that I was very interested in Alex Murdaugh's case. I came late to the party, as I often do with the true crime stuff, but I did have a lot in common with Buster Murdaugh, who is Alex Murdaugh's surviving son. As you know, Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were murdered brutally in 2021. And Alex Murdaugh was convicted by a jury of his peers in those murders. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of conjecture that flies around Murdaugh. And he had, as you guys know, and I've talked about it, there's all my videos in the true crime section of this channel that I talk about Alex Murdaugh and the case and my opinion on Buster Murdaugh being someone who has testified against his father in a murder trial for the murder of his mother, and sort of the cognitive dissonance that he might be going through and the things that he might be experiencing. So I think I forgot my phone. Not that I need it, but yeah, it must be downstairs. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the notifications. So a couple of things, though. So we've got the poll up on the screen. Not so fast, Alec. It looks like is the consensus so far. Yeah, and he is. Of course, he's not getting out. Period. You know, he's got the federal charges. He's got all kinds of wackiness going on. So, you know, he's not going anywhere fast. But it is interesting. So we're going to play a little bit of what Jesse Weber talks about, and finally able to breathe. So I'm happy to catch y'all. I wonder if I can show this. Okay, never mind. I don't often interact with the YouTube interface because I run everything through a program called Streamyard. So I'm not able to always add the emojis and see what y'all say. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun to do it this way. All right. A lot going on also in my personal life. I won't get into too much of it, but we're once again, there's a lot of stuff that's coming out around my story and a lot of projects that I have going on because, and as if you guys have noticed, I put a lot of content out in June. July kind of faded here in August. I have a lot of projects happening that have demanded my attention, so I haven't been able to make as much content. But the reason why is because I'm building up to make more content for you guys because this is really what I love doing. It's just gets overwhelming when you're working on 14 different projects. But one of the things that we are working on is more regular form YouTube videos analyzing popular cases and popular events in pop culture, which is something that I have wanted to do a lot more of. So you're going to be seeing a lot more content of some wonderful people who have joined the team. Karen Fan has been kicking ass for us. And we got a lot of people coming in, streamlining the channel, streamlining the content on Instagram. It's just a lot of work, but I got a lot of big stuff coming out. So I have a new docuseries which is coming out, and I have a potential new podcast. Well, I do have a new podcast coming out, and some other and some big stuff on some big channels that is coming out in the next month and a half. So if you are a member of the Patreon or you're a member of the channel members, you guys get access to all this info. And I'll talk about it next week during my meet and greet. I'll share with y'all about what's going on because I do every month when we do our meet and greets. You guys get to have that peek behind the curtain in my life, and I can talk about all these projects. I just can't really talk about them publicly right now because everything is a little hush hush. But contracts and all those things. But it's really exciting. I hope y'all join me for that next Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. There is links to all of this in the channel members area where you guys can sign up. The poll is now 67 says not so fast and 33 say new trial. But I'm going to post a new poll here in a little bit about what kind of content you guys enjoy seeing. I know a lot of you discovered me from the Karen Reed trial. I know a lot of you like trial analysis and things like that. That's not really the direction that I like this channel going. I love giving my opinion on things. I love talking. I definitely love the sound of my own voice, but I want to be able to present more content that's authentic to myself and to you guys and why you've tuned in the first place. So we're going to be, as I said, getting back to a lot more of that, a lot more mental health stuff. There's a question. I was talking to some people who I'm interviewing for the channel who have a very harrowing story, childhood surviving just some horrific stuff, a criminal father and involved in a very criminal enterprise. They're going to be coming on the channel. And we got into talking a little bit about my process of reconciliation. And I've talked about it in other videos. Hang on, guys. I gotta do something really fast here. We got to talk to Alexa. Oh, it's amazing. Don't you love it when your Amazon Alexa listens to you? I don't want to say it too loud because then she's going to respond. But she listened and the music stopped. Sorry. I play music for little Marisol, who isn't even here today. She's off living her best life, but she, I keep it to keep her company. So, anyways, one of the things that we got into this conversation of, because, you know, as trauma survivors, as people that go through this type of stuff, unfortunately, and you know, trauma is very interesting, as I've said on the program many times. You know, we all have our own reaction to it. We all have our own opinions of it, and we all process it differently. But one of the things that I sort of, and I'm going to do a separate video about this, but getting back into more of the mental health stuff that I like to talk about, is there is often when you have a father who's a criminal, or you have you have a childhood relationship with someone who is a criminal, or there's someone you have looked up to part of your life because it's a parent, you know, despite what they do, you always have this little bit of hope in your heart. And as I was discussing that with these people, they're like, you should talk about this more on your show. You haven't talked about that in a while, and it can really help people. And as I was saying to this woman, I said, you know, I understand what her brother was going through, because I, for a long time, struggled with not only understanding my father and why he committed the crime that he committed, and why he would do such a thing, and how he thought he was going to get away with it, but also I struggled with sort of reconciling with the fact that this was somebody at a period of my life as a very young boy. I looked up to my dad in a lot of ways. I admired my dad. I was driving home today from a friend's house before this live, and I was thinking about a quote that he had said to me, but I was thinking about it in my own terms. I forgot that I didn't forget, but I wasn't thinking that he had told, it wasn't top of mind until I said it to myself. And then I was like, oh yeah, I remember when he said that to me. He wrote that into me in a letter. Because a lot of times my father, as I've talked about in other videos, my father would wanted to manipulate me before the parole board, but also wanted to manipulate me in ways to help him get out of prison. So he would say a lot of things to either placate me or try to get me in his corner, right? So obviously when you're dealing with someone who's a psychopath or a malignant narcissist, there's a lot of confusion that goes around that. And one of the things that confused me is that my father could give me such great advice. I was talking to this young woman. I was saying, I get it, because on the flip side, you admire your parent, you admire your father, you admire this person that was in your life, because you've gotten the best qualities from them. I got the best. I look back and I realize that I thank God I have so much of my mother in me, but I got back so much. I got so much out of my father. My father's very intelligent. Look, my father's tall. I'm tall. I'm big. You know what I mean? I'm an athletic guy. You know, I got all that from my dad. And both of my parents were incredibly intelligent, voracious readers. And I learned I inherited these traits. And I thought, you know, when a lot of people you're discussing this and you're looking back on your life and dealing with and reconciling this trauma, you're also kind of saying, you know, but I got some good from this. You can't just chalk it up to being all bad. And when this young man was speaking to me, and young man, he's like my age, so I'm going to still call him a young man. But when this young man was speaking to me and he was upset about these certain things, I understood, because I was like, man, I've been there. Like, I know, like, you want to idealize your father. You want to be in a position where, because you still love him and you still admire what he created or built, whether it's criminal or not, you're still like, that's your dad, right? That's somebody you look up to. Or whether it's your dad or a father figure or a parent, mother, you know, I'm sure a lot of women who have very complicated relationships with their mothers, I'm sure they look up. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I've dated my fair share of people, and a lot of them have very complex relationships with their moms. A lot of times, you know, a girl I was recently talking to said, you know, my mom is a narcissist and my mom is this, and it's all about her all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that causes a lot. But again, looked up to her mom because she kept the household together. she made lunch and got the kids to school and kept everything together so dad could work, right? And she recognized her sort of position in the family unit. I recognize my father as like, oh, he was a breadwinner, right? So again, when you're trying to reconcile a lot of this, it's like, oh, you just go through it. This man was talking, and I was saying to his sister, look, I understand that it's hard for him to vilify his father, even though he knows what his father did to him and the family, and we're talking some really horrific stuff, and the positions that he put his family in, and this person was in and out of prison, and they but I understand this cognitive dissonance of why this person was so destructive, but you also admired them. And so when I think of the case of Buster Murdaugh, right, there's always a tie-in here to where we're talking about case of Buster Murdaugh, and one of the reasons why I talked about him so much is that I understood very empathetically that, look, his father was a lawyer. His father was, I had Kenny Kinsey on last year, Dr. Kenny Kinsey, who was one of the forensics experts that was in the Murdaugh trial. And he said, he was a renowned litigator. He was very good in the courtroom, had the gift of gab, clearly had a lot of people that liked and admired him, and had a family with a lot of history. So there was a lot for Buster to look up to. But there's a lot of darkness there. And it's something that that I don't wish on anyone. I don't when you're in a situation like that, only it's one of those, to use the acronym of our time, IYKYK. If you know, right? And I think that when you're looking at trying to understand or comprehend why this person did something horrific, but at the same time you admire them, and you kind of begin to sort of live in this sort of cycle of self-admonishment, self-chastisation, self-deprecation. And that can be depressing. And, it doesn't matter what your familial status is, what your relationship is that when you're trying to comprehend and understand the amount of and the significance of the betrayal that occurred, and the betrayal of others in your family unit, and the betrayal of a community, and reconcile all that, it becomes a very convoluted cocktail of it's just a lot of shit. What can I say? Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a psychologist. I do not work in law enforcement. I'm just a guy who's been through a lot of shit. This is just my opinion. You guys have asked for this. This is what I'm giving you. So without me droning on and on about this subject, let's get into this current episode of Sidebar to see what they talk about here and what the Alex Murdaugh sitch is looking like moving forward. Obviously, we talked about how, I just want to make sure I wasn't on mute. Could you imagine if I talk? Oy vey, I'm muted. Sometimes, as you guys know, we've been watching this show for a while. I do often put myself on mute and then forget that it's on mute. If I'm to, Marisol starts barking, or the Amazon guy comes to the door and ding dong, and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, but do you like my suit? We're getting a different look here. I'm going to step back here. Look at this nice suit jacket, like a sport coat. This is a big stretch for me, guys. This is a big stretch. Doing the sport coat. We're upgrading the look of the show, by the way. So, anyways, that is my new. I took full advantage of the sales that were going on at Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's last month, and ripped the Band-Aid off and was like, I need a sport coat. Because a lot of you have met me know I'm a Nikes t-shirt, leather jacket kind of guy. I've had to do a little bit of a wardrobe upgrade. I had to buy adult clothes. What can I say? And I don't know how I feel about that either, just so you know. Thank you so much, Crystal DeSaro. I saw that somebody bought a super sticker. Cat Loves Catskills. Thank you so much for your support and for always supporting my perspective. I greatly appreciate that. Wait, can you stand up again? Sure. What are we? Well, you look at anything bad. Well, thank you so much, Black Widow. I appreciate it. Big band t-shirt, black leggings, and my oversized denim jacket, my comfy outfit. Yes. And also the sales at Banana Republic too. I rediscovered Banana Republic, and I was telling the guy at Banana Republic the other day, I said, man, I remember when the store was like just like cargo shorts and and vacation apparel and wacky t-shirts. I was a very little kid though. I mean, I remember going there with my mom. I was a little kid. But anyways, Banana Republic has changed. They got a whole new image. Anyways, I digress. I don't want to talk about shopping. I mean, I could talk about shopping all day, but I don't think you come here for the shopping advice. Although a friend of mine said you should probably do a shopping. You should probably talk about men's clothes because you seem to have a real passion for it. So I'm going to put another, before we get into this Alex Murdaugh thing. Well, actually, I'll keep this up. If you stick around a little later, I want to talk about some content things that are coming up as well. Get your all's opinion on it. We'll put a little poll up. Y'all can vote. All right, let's see here. This is, all right, here's Streamyard. We're going to go ahead and present a little share screen. Yeah, there we go. Black Widow, thank you so much for being a member for a lot of months. 14 months. Wild. I really appreciate it, guys. You guys inspire me to keep doing the show and inspire me to roll through. And I'm telling you, this is always such a and your support helps keep the lights on and stuff, but it's very, very difficult and very expensive to do all of this. I've seen a few people I've known, and they're on different shows, and they're like, yeah, I just exhausted my 401k. I got to get a real job. This is a lot. So I've been cultivating a sort of side business that I have to sort of allow me to, because the biggest part of putting out content is editing content. And when I'm busy doing projects for other people, it really gets very convoluted. So I'm very excited that all this is going to be coming to fruition because I need it. I need to get a lot more content out for you guys. And I love doing this show so much. It's just burning the candle at both ends. But alas, let's get into a little Alex Murdaugh, shall we? Oh, that's the wrong thing. There we go.
In your affidavit, you said before the defense put up their case, Ms. Hill told the jurors, quote, the defense is about to do their side. They're going to say things that will try to confuse you. Don't let them confuse you or convince you or throw you off, unquote. Is this true? Did Ms. Hill say that?
That's exactly what she told us.
I'm sorry?
That's exactly what she told us.
Okay.
The highest court in South Carolina may have just given convicted murderer Alex Murdaugh a legal lifeline. We are going to break down this major development with attorney Joe McCulla, who actually represents two jurors from Alex Murdaugh's trial that may play a very important role moving forward. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Alex Murdaugh, the guy we just can't seem to ever stop talking about. We have a very, very big update in this case. Because what would you say if I told you we may have Alex Murdaugh murder trial part 2? Think about that. Now, is it a long shot or not? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Before we begin, I have an announcement for you. This, in fact, and it's crazy for me to say, is our 1,000th episode of Sidebar. 1,000. That is unbelievable.
That's wild.
You know, we launched this podcast during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial back in 2022. It started as a way to just recap what was happening in that courtroom every day. And it absolutely blew up. I mean, that was a huge trial. This podcast topped all the charts. Everybody was watching and listening. But I remember saying to myself and the team, this is only going to be here. We'll say, always say it's shit and provide.
Jesse Weber is apparently everywhere, by the way. Apparently he's everywhere. I saw him on like Fox or News Nation. You guys, the show over there, like I want that guy's gig. I don't know about his
They don't like the spotlight. They're not a peacock like me, but I'm going to call them out.
Gotta put it on your ears, buddy. Gotta put it on your ears.
You see him on the street and you say, hey, aren't you the guy from After Hours? You'll make his life. You'll make his day. You'll make everything. He won't have contributions to there. Thank you so much. Our executive diner and not only work, who has to sit there and watch me day in and Mr. McDonald with our set. I will, of course, stage by that could in fact to thank everybody. 1,000 down, 1,000 more to go. Back to Alex Murdaugh. So here's the big news. The South Carolina Supreme Court has just agreed to hear a major issue that could in fact result in the retrial of the convicted killer. The man who was found guilty of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul back on their family property back in 2021, shot them to death. Motive was that he killed his family to distract away from all of his financial crimes, namely stealing money from his law firm and clients, particularly to fuel his drug addiction. And as a way to prevent being found out and buy himself time, he killed his family. Hey, by the way, for our 1000th episode, let me also call out our incredible sponsors. Thank you so much for your support. And that includes, by the way, Blue Land. So did you know that laundry detergent pods are also wrapped in plastic? Yeah, that film around your pods is plastic, and it ends up in our oceans, our river, in the sand, successfully created before they became a spot off. Now, as you may recall, after the trial, it came out that the clerk of the court, Becky Hill, was accused of engaging in some shenanigans during the trial. Murdaugh's defense team argued that Hill had
really fast though. He's advertising that Blue Land. Have you guys tried these the supposed laundry sheets that are happening? I suppose they're going to get rid of them because the plastic is absolutely god awful in those. Your laundry detergent, like that plastic is terrible. I use laundry detergent too, but supposedly these laundry sheets are really amazing. Hey, you guys want to sponsor the channel? Come see me. Supposedly they're amazing.
Had inappropriate communications with the jury
Becky Hill
during this trial, namely trying to influence them to find Alex Murdaugh guilty. And they argued that Hill had a book deal and she had an incentive to make sure Murdaugh was convicted. In fact, there was an accusation that she allowed a picture of Murdaugh to be taken of him in a holding cell as a way to promote her book. And one of the more alarming allegations was that Hill intentionally got one juror booted from the jury after she allegedly told Hill she had questions about whether Alex Murdaugh was actually guilty. And the defense alleged that Hill fabricated a Facebook post authored by the juror's ex-husband, a post that said he talked to the juror, his ex-wife, about the case. Defense says the ex-husband never posted it. But again, the juror was dismissed nonetheless. And the defense said that they spoke to several jurors and there were issues, like Hill allegedly telling the jurors not to believe Alex Murdaugh's testimony. Guys. So what happened? A hearing was held to determine what is going on and whether Alex Murdaugh should be entitled to a new trial based on what Hill allegedly did. Did she improperly taint and influence this jury? I'll give you an example of what happened. Listen to what one juror said during this hearing.
Did you hear Ms. Becky Hill make any comment about this case before your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
If yes, what did Ms. Hill say?
To watch his actions.
To watch his actions? What else?
To watch him closely.
To watch him closely. Was your verdict on March the 2nd, 2023 in any way with any influenced in any way with any communications by the clerk of court, Becky Hill, in this case?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
All right. Was your verdict influenced in any way by the communications of the clerk of court in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was it influenced?
To me, it felt like she made it seem like he was already guilty.
All right. And I understand that. That's the tenor of the remarks she made. Did that affect your finding of guilty in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
But ultimately, retired Justice Jean Toll didn't find the evidence was sufficient to warrant a new trial, that the verdict wasn't directly affected by what Hill did or did not do. And that didn't come, though, without some...
All right. So, yeah, here he gets into this whole little ditty here. Muted. I just unmuted myself. Oh my goodness. I just unmuted myself. Are you kidding me? All right. Anyways. Thank you so much for saying we made your Sunday. Thank you, Sharita Hall. Appreciate that. Yes, thank you so much, guys. Sorry. Yeah. I can't hear. Is it just me? Yeah. Sorry, guys. I clicked the mute so I wouldn't talk over the other video. Anyways, so as I talked about, and as he was just getting into, at the time, when this whole hearing was going on, which I believe was the 29th of January, if I'm not mistaken, of this year. So 6 months ago, at least 6 months ago. We had, looked like Becky Hill goose was kind of cooked, and then, there's a lot. And then I remember specifically one of the jurors, when they came in, the courtroom camera went on her and sort of tracked her down and then moved away. So because the jurors were not supposed to be exposed on camera, much like anyone. And we saw this in the Karen Reed trial too. Like, you can't show anybody on camera. I mean, this is very dangerous. And unless you're in the courtroom, but it's interesting because Judge Toll at the end of the day just did not think and just told them to go to the Court of Appeals, which is where he's going to break this down right now. We're going to get back.
Parting words and criticism from Ms. Hill.
Ms. Hill denies and so the question becomes, was her denial credible? I find that the clerk of court is not completely credible as a witness. Ms. Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity. She wanted to write a book about the trial and expressed that as early as November 2022, long before the trial began. She denies that this is so, but I find that she stated to the clerk of court, Rhonda McElveen, and others, her desire for a guilty verdict because it would sell books. She
Two
made
more minutes
comments
on the
about
poll.
Murdaugh's
2 more
demeanor
minutes.
as he testified, and she made some of those comments before he testified to at least one and maybe more jurors. Did Clerk of Court Hill's comments have any impact on the verdict of the jury? I find that the answer to this question is no. Each member of this jury took their involuntary assignment very seriously. They obeyed the instructions of the court. They obeyed their oath. These good and decent citizens of Colleton County stood to their duty and rendered their verdict without fear or favor. I simply do not believe that the authority of our South Carolina Supreme Court requires a new trial in a very lengthy trial such as this on the strength of some fleeting and foolish comments
This is
by a
wild.
publicity influenced clerk of court. This is a matter within the discretion of the trial judge, and I am the trial judge at this moment. I do not feel that I abuse my discretion when I find the defendant's motion for a new trial on the factual record before me must be denied. And it is so ordered.
Hill, by the way, now faces 76 misconduct allegations. She has resigned from her position, and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division has opened up a probe into whether Hill used her office, her role, for personal gain. But now, the South Carolina Supreme Court has agreed to hear this case, this jury tampering issue. And they will now hear arguments about whether it was improper for Justice Toll to deny a new trial based on these jury tampering allegations. Very, very big win for the defense. Why did the court agree to this? Could this work? Could we see Alex Murdaugh 2.0? Well, with that, I had a chance to sit down and chat with Joe McCulla, an attorney who represents two of the jurors in Alex Murdaugh's trial. If you've been following our coverage, you know
Great hair. Great head of hair on that guy.
Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for coming
Great
on.
to be here.
So what was your reaction, and why do you think the South Carolina Supreme Court agreed to hear this appeal? What was your reaction? Why do you think they decided to do it?
Well, it's a really good question, and there are lawyers all over South Carolina killing pigeons and reading the intros, because there are a few things very significant about this action by the Supreme Court. There is the appeal of the murder case, which is separate and apart from this new trial motion appeal. The defense moved for the Court of Appeals, or for the Supreme Court rather, to take it. And that's not, it's rarely done, I would say, except in matters of extreme significance. But this court, as of last week, is now, I won't say run, but presided over by a new Chief Justice. The new Chief Justice is
As I often say, look, a lot of people are very confused about our justice system, but it is the best in the world, but it has to work for the worst of us so it can work for the best of us. And in my opinion, even if you don't like Alex Murdaugh, you don't like this person, you don't like that person, they're convicted in the court of public opinion. So many people were on the warpath against Karen Reed because of what she wore during her trial, or what her face looked like, or what Ashley Benefield did or didn't say, or what, it always has to work for the worst of us so it can work for the best of us. And Alex Murdaugh's case, look, I don't think anyone has ever beaten this drum of being like, he's an amazing guy. That said, it has to work for the worst of us so it can work for the best of us, because if he can't get a fair trial or he can't get justice, how can we expect that either? So just something to think about. I know it's a very divisive opinion, and two things can be true at the same time. Alex Murdaugh could have had a lot of corruption and a lot of shenanigans going on his trial, and he can still be guilty, and he can still be a horrible person. Two things can be true at the same time. So never forget that too. A lot of this, in my opinion, is coming from someone who has lived and dealt with crime and true crime. And I've been dealing with this since I was 11 years old. Is, there are people's opinions that exist in and outside the courtroom, but that should never skew the wheels of justice. Should never have that outside impact. It should only be what happens in the courtroom. And that's it. That's it, And it sucks, by the way. It sucks being in a position like this. And it sucks for Buster Murdaugh. And it sucks for others who have to deal with it. And the fallout from Alex Murdaugh's theft of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of settlement money towards his clients. Yeah, it wasn't hundreds. It was millions of dollars. It's just, it's just something that's very, very real for people. And you got to, again, has to work for the worst of us so it can work for the best of us. That's all I got.
A gentleman named John Kittredge, a wonderful man and jurist, who also happened to write the opinion in State versus Green, which is what this whole new trial motion revolves around. And of course, the defense's position in their motion, in this motion for this court, the Supreme Court, to evaluate the new trial proceedings, they take the position that the judge who presided over that, Justice Toll, former Supreme Court Justice, that she misread State versus Green, written by the Chief Justice, who was a part of this decision to take this case and hear it themselves immediately.
So summarize for our viewers what State versus Green means. And if the fact that they're taking it up means, I think a fair interpretation is, Justice Toll, you might have misinterpreted it. Now it's time for us to set the record straight.
Well, I don't know. I don't know
Justice State versus Green, and then you can give me your
Well, the simple explanation, I guess, of a not terribly complex situation is when allegations of jury interference, any type of communication occurring between court staff or any person outside of the jury itself, any communications that could potentially interfere with the jury's objectivity and deliberations, that's something the courts must look into immediately.
This is really interesting.
There's nothing more sacrosanct in our system than a pure jury. So the United States Supreme Court, in a case called Rimmer versus the United States, said that in these cases where you are able to validate to some degree that there are miscommunications, improper communications, that the presumption arises that these communications have tainted the jury irretrievably. And that presumption was that standard established by the United States Supreme Court is the subject of State versus Green, which is a case in which a bailiff communicated with the jury on some sidebar issues that had nothing to do with guilt or innocence, but a little more than how's the weather. And the Justice Kittredge's opinion in that case found that Renner did not apply in that situation. But his opinion did not say that Renner doesn't apply in a different situation. And that's really the issue.
See, I will tell you, when I was watching that hearing with Justice Toll, and this is not to...
Just want to take a special moment here to shout out Rhiannon Rose. Congratulations on your new granddaughter, Clover Jade. Congratulations. Enjoy your time in Atlanta.
Criticize her in any way. I felt that the evidence was sufficient. And this is not how I feel about Alex Murdaugh in the case. I think the evidence against him was so sufficient that the finding of him being found guilty was a clear result. Having said that, I thought the evidence was enough for him to get a new trial. I thought there was something very improper, particularly one of the jurors stepping up and saying, they heard what Becky Hill said to them. It influenced their opinion. I know there was back and forth about whether or not it really influenced her opinion. I thought there was enough. Did you look at that hearing and say that there was something deficient in that hearing, something that the Supreme Court now might disagree with?
Well, because I have to practice law in South Carolina when I get back day after tomorrow, I'm not going to evaluate Justice Toll, who is an old friend, someone I've known my entire life. We've grown up in the town and went to the same high school. I have to say that as I watched the proceedings, I believed that there needed to be further inquiry. I believe strongly that juror number 785, who was the removed juror, who was not called upon to testify, but was present across the street in my office from the courthouse, I believe that her information, because it went to the immediate question of what kinds of communications the clerk of court had with the jury, with my client, with other jurors, and I think that's the crux of the problem here, and that's the crux of the situation, and that's what in this taking of the case by our state Supreme Court, taking it away from the Court of Appeals, leapfrogging over that intermediate step, what that leaves or presents to this court, our Supreme Court, are several choices. They can declare that the proceedings and the decision was proper and that no new trial is granted. They could find that perhaps the trial judge, Justice Toll, did not utilize the right standard or misinterpreted, in which case they could then sua sponte declare a new trial. I think what's more likely is if they conclude that there are problems with the standard or problems with the scope of the inquiry, I think it's far more likely they're going to remand to a trial judge. It won't be Justice Toll. It likely would be another judge by the name of Taylor, who's a very good jurist, somewhat new to the bench. But it would go back to him, I think, because everything else in the Murdaugh case has been assigned to him with the retirement of Judge Newman. So I think that it could be remanded to him to really use the proper, with the direction to use the standard the court dictates in their decision, and then we'll have a whole new hearing.
And I would imagine your clients might have to testify at that hearing.
Well, they were one of my clients testified in the last hearing. The other juror, who was the removed juror, 785, was not permitted to testify. I would hope that in the next proceeding, both would be allowed.
That's funny.
I know you can't divulge communications you had with your clients, but do they have a feeling? Do they have a reaction to the fact that the South Carolina Supreme Court is now agreeing to hear this? Anything you can share?
Well, I think that they recognize there may be, deja vu all over again.
Right.
I don't think anyone, especially these ladies, are happy about the possibility of testifying again.
Right.
It's a kind of a scarifying situation, and they're prepared to do so. And I want to say, to follow up on something you said, Alex Murdaugh may be the worst human on earth.
Right.
Probably not the worst, and he may very well be very guilty. But what they believe, and the reason they came forward, is that they believe even he deserves a fair trial.
And I've said this before. The evidence against Alex Murdaugh was substantial. In my mind, it was very clear he murdered his family. But I've always said this in very high-profile cases and cases where the crimes are absolutely heinous. It's even that more important to get it right, so that there is not a situation where there's a retrial, and you want to make sure you do it right. And that's for justice for the victims. It's also, you don't want to go through the expense, the heartache, the time of going through another trial. So you may have to make sure it goes right. And I agree, every criminal defendant has a right. Now, you said something interesting to me before we started. That
I'm just trying to make it stop. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you don't get it right, nobody gets any justice. So yeah, right on there, Jesse Weber. You got to get it right. You got to get it right the first time. You got to get it right. Everybody deserves justice, whatever that is. Because if you don't, it's just like I said in the Karen Reed trial. There's so many people out for blood on Karen Reed, and she did this, she did blah, 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 and it's like, guys, it's very hard to see how this evidence that was presented by the prosecution could lead beyond a reasonable doubt that she had in fact murdered John O'Keefe. And putting an innocent person in prison does not get justice for the families or anything. Putting someone behind bars for, when it's not a clean trial, when there's tampering with the jury, it's bad. Like, you don't want to see that happen to anyone. Just think about if that happened to you, if you were on trial or your loved one was on trial and that happened, you would want the swift wheels of justice and the scales to tip into your favor as well. So it's something to think about when we're watching this type of stuff and we're analyzing it, right?
You had filed a specific motion about, I would say, everybody getting a little bit more information about what's going on. And now you have to adjust it based on the fact that the Supreme Court has taken this off.
Well, I think it may not be crystal clear to your viewers that in the last several days, to the point just before the jury was to go back to begin deliberation, there had been several days of proceedings backstage, what we call in camera, just the judge, just the prosecution and defense lawyers, and a few witnesses, including Juror 785, and some others who gave information to the court. Those proceedings are what I believe, I have previously filed a motion last year to unseal those records to allow me access, and so that I could go over that information with my client, because she was in the in-camera proceedings only part of the time. once I'd looked at those records, I believe that the public should be entitled to see what happened backstage, to have that information. I'm not a big fan of the word transparency, but I do think that the public is fascinated with this case, if not obsessed. If they're going to be obsessed, then let's fulfill their obsession with knowledge, information. And so I will be filing another motion, which I had previously filed 2 weeks ago in the Court of Appeals. Now I'm having to file it in the Supreme Court, asking the court to either remand it to a trial judge to conclude if the records should be unsealed, or for the court to unseal them spontaneously. But when that occurs, they'll be available to your viewers, to you, and the subject of public discussion.
I know you can't.
That's interesting. That's a really good point. Him saying that he wants these unsealed because he doesn't see any problems as someone who's representing some of these jurors. But also so the public can see what happened behind the scenes, the transparency of all of it. It's very key, because mistrust of our justice system, of our legal system, of our policing efforts, of our our political system, there's a lot of mistrust and a lot of hyperbolic rhetoric that goes on around these hallmark institutions of our country. And to have people mistrust this, like having a little transparency, I think would go a long way. It's a great, I used to be very speculative or sort of skeptical of streaming of trials, streaming of the courtroom. And look, I was someone who was streamed in the courtroom. Well, we didn't have streaming back then, but my testimony was televised in my father's murder trial as a 12-year-old child. And I often would say, like, why are people consuming this content, or why do people want to see inside the courtroom? But in a lot of ways, it's so great to show how the justice system works behind closed doors, because not a lot of people ever have had that opportunity to see that. So hopefully that presents mistrust in the justice system as well, and in our policing efforts, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways.
Say anything about it, but if you had to take a guess, what would be our reaction if that information came out?
Well, I think it'll take some digestive time, but
I'm going to go ahead and back this up a little bit.
They'll be available to your viewers, the court to unseal them spontaneously. But when that occurs, they'll be available to your viewers, to you, and the subject of public discussion.
I know you can't say anything about it, but if you had to take a guess, what would be our reaction if that information came out?
Well, I think it'll take some digestive time, but the defense is in favor and has consented to my motion to unseal. The prosecution has opposed it.
Fair enough. Okay. That's
whatever you choose to infer.
Take from that way well. If Alex Murdaugh, if the Supreme Court comes out and says, you know what, new trial, when's the earliest we could actually get a new murder trial for Alex Murdaugh?
We were straight.
Yeah.
I think I've been at this business almost 50 years trying criminal cases, and the worst cases that I've tried are the ones that I tried more than once.
Sure.
Because and I've done it as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer, and it's worse as a defense lawyer. Prosecutors plod through the deal and their facts don't change. Right. The defense can adjust strategies, but God knows having to do it again is just a grueling thing. And it's no doubt worse for the accused, the victims, all of the people that are the players in these melodramas are drastically affected by a trial, and then a retrial is just horrible.
I don't know how he would be able to get a fair and impartial jury. It was one thing how much attention was brought to the case, even before a jury was selected. Now, afterwards, this was, by the way, a case that wasn't not only we followed here, but I remember during the closing arguments, CNN was doing live coverage of it, was following it. And I don't remember the last time they followed closing arguments in a case like that. Maybe Ahmaud Arbery, maybe Kyle Rittenhouse, something like that. But it was a case that took the nation by storm. Everybody was following it. How on earth can you get a fair and impartial jury?
Far more than a nation. I did interviews with the BBC.
How on earth?
I was in Paris last year with my wife and had drinks with a journalist who was, I bought him drinks in Paris, but he spent 6 weeks in Walterboro with me.
That's wild.
It's a fascinating case that has somehow enveloped the international attention. So, and it's not over yet.
No. And by the way, if he's retried,
it's not over yet.
No, the answer to this. Big part of the first trial was the financial crimes evidence. Would that come in again, you think?
Well, I did not believe that the extent of information that was allowed in the financial crimes. The other bad acts is what they're called under our laws. I thought that I really had issue with that.
Sure.
And I suspect that being one of the real spokes in the wheel driving the defense appeal, that's a big piece of the appeal that was so prejudicial. I suspect if a retrial were to occur, that the next judge will study on the appellate issues and tone some things down, fine tune the trial itself. And that'll be great, because if I have to go watch the next one, maybe we can do it in 3 weeks instead of 6.
Well, look, I know motive is not an element of a crime. The prosecution doesn't have to prove motive. It does help tell a story, particularly when you're saying a man is accused of killing his wife and son. Why would he do that? The financial crimes were the whole motive. It was that, the world was closing in on him. Well, he had to distract.
Let me disagree with you.
Yeah?
That's what the prosecution started with.
Right.
But what they ended with was that he really went berserk and killed them. And I'm struggling to find the phrase they used. And it happened to be a phrase that I had used on one of your competitor crime programs.
We don't talk about them.
Right. But I used that phrase because I just read it in some obscure news article, and then it popped up 2 days later in the closing arguments.
Right.
That nothing was much said about the financial crimes. He now was a guy who went insane and killed them.
But because his world was closing in. That's what. See, we could debate that all day. Before I let you go, because this whole issue about whether or not he gets a new trial is centered around Becky Hill and what she allegedly did, and I know she has dozens of misconduct allegations levied against her, not criminal but ethics violations. What's just your overall take on everything that you learned about what Becky Hill is accused of doing?
I can't tell you how sad I am about that, because I did not know Becky Hill well before the trial began. I contacted her. She was so nice and so professional in dealing with my needs, with the press needs, with everything that happened in the trial. And when things just began to collapse in her world, I was astonished and so sad. She has good lawyers. It appears that she's going to need them. I don't know what's going to happen. I know that there's a continuing investigation, I'm told, by the Attorney General's office in conjunction with SLED, or SLED is the investigative agency, even about jury tampering as well as these other spending issues. But, the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General who participated pretty professionally in the trial itself, I think they've got a challenge in being objective. I mean, I recall in the press conference that followed the verdict that the Attorney General and his staff were reveling and taking a little victory lap around the podium. And he said, "I want to thank Becky Hill." And somebody says, "Gosh, she's up there on the balcony." And he said, "Thank you, Becky Boo." Well, when you've got that relationship, I think that is a real challenge to be objective. And I think his office will have to consider that.
That's a really good point. Joe McCulla, thank you so much for coming on.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. That's all we have for you right now here on.
All right. That is, I just thought that was really cool. A cool episode to for us to take a look at, just because of that interview with Joe McCulla. I thought it was pretty interesting. As I said, I covered the whole kerfuffle around the Murdaugh trial, post trial, with Becky Hill's book coming out last August? It was like a year ago. I interviewed Neil Gordon and his wife. I haven't put the interview out yet. I did it a couple months ago. I guess I should probably do that now that Murdaugh is back in the news. But it was interesting. It's interesting to see what the ramifications of just one bad decision and how that just continues to domino. And as Joe McCulla said, hopefully she has some good lawyers to represent her, because she's in a lot of hot water. And again, as Justice Toll had said in that hearing, it was the siren song of fame that had called her, and she made some really poor choices. And here we are. Mover Nation, we get through another one. I want to say thank you to all my channel members, channel subscribers, all of you guys. Thank you so much. Remember, next Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, we have our live members only meet and greets. Whether you are a channel member, a Patreon supporter, we have this. We all get together. I got a lot of stuff to share with you guys that are channel members. And we get to interact face to face. It's very cool. We do it through Google Meet. There are links to that in the members section here and also on Patreon. So if you're a supporter on either platform, you have access to that, the links and everything, and I will continue to promote that as well. And yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, YouTube Premium is for $11.98 a month, and that is a very worthwhile investment if you are watching and consuming a lot of YouTube, because you can just let it stream on your phone and go about your business and do other things. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Here's the outro. Mover Nation, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. And for more exclusive content, behind the scenes videos, monthly VIP meet and greets, and watch parties, please consider supporting me on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube channel member. If you like this video, check out this one right here or this one right here. And don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps with the algorithm. On that note, I'm Collier Landry. I'll see you on the next one. Good girl, Marisol. Good girl.